So I get up, I walk into my computer, turn it on. Who's there? My dear friend Dewey Freeman.
Here I am. I actually got on here early because I've missed you, and I was hoping that we'd be able to connect a bit, and we have. And so good to see you, my friend.
See
So
how that
good.
is. I'm Mark Sylvester. We are the Elder Council. Took a week and went to Washington, D.C. and to see in person our history and our monuments memorial to history was quite powerful on a ton of different levels. And here's what made it even a little bit sweeter was my grandson, my middle grandson is named Lincoln, and his dad had sent me a text. He says, make sure you take a picture. And I was like, oh, I got to do way more than that. So I FaceTimed him from the top steps from where Martin Luther King gave his
Oh
"I Have
my
a Dream"
gosh.
speech, because it's carved into the ground. And standing there and looking at the mall and the Washington Monument and the Capitol was epic, absolutely epic.
I would bet. Is there anything I can't even imagine that? I mean, I can imagine I've been to Washington, D.C., but having the time and ability to go look at all of those places, what struck you with that? What did you sort of leave with inside your bones, in
Um,
addition to honoring your grandson?
Well, I had an office in DC for years and years and years. Our software company did business with the government. There's tons of, classified visualization projects that we were involved in. But I went and worked and left. I never
Mhm.
was a tourist. You see stuff, you can't help but see stuff.
Right.
Um, but the just the sense of history was profound. How big It's interesting how big and small things are. Things are big, but they're not tall. It's interesting.
Mm.
They have a height limit. So things are big and massive and all of that, but not tall. I think the other thing that was interesting is the sense of design that pervades everything, from the design and layout of the city itself, designed by the same guy who did Paris. Le Enfant, I don't speak French, but he,
Really? I
yeah, it
didn't know
was
that.
designed. So the whole grid structure and radial nature coming out from the Capitol. So the design is a part and parcel of the whole history, including
Mm.
every every monument has a design competition. Like the Vietnam Memorial was designed by I believe, a Chinese student at Yale, well, female. And there's here's one of the surprising things was we went to the Pentagon Memorial where on 9/11 the plane crashed, and we had a friend of ours who's a colonel in the Air Force, and uh, had in a prior life she was a tour guide for middle school kids, so she could point out the things that the ordinary person you're just not going to
Right. If you're
notice.
just kind of walking through, you wouldn't know.
And the Pentagon Memorial is spectacular. Go Google it and take a look at it. And we were the only ones there because it's a little
Yeah,
bit
I
of a
hadn't even
hike.
heard about it until right now, actually.
It's a thing, and it was just spectacular to me. I was noticing the sense of design and the way things were laid out and the way they memorialized each one of the person who had died, whether they died in the plane or they died in the Pentagon, and
Mm.
which way the bench faced let you know, did they die in the plane or did they die in the Pentagon. Where these were placed over, gosh, an acre long area was based on the age, the angles. Here's what was interesting, and we'll leave with this. Everything, we got to go see the changing of the guard of the tomb of the unknown soldier, and she said everything in Washington is steeped in symbolism. And like she asked us, okay, when we're watching the guard, how many steps does he take? And when he gets to the end, he waits. How long does he wait? Which side of his body is the gun on? And what rank is he? Okay. So now we have something to do while we're watching.
Yeah.
And he takes 21 steps. He waits for 21 seconds, turns, and walks back 21 steps. And they do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have done since the 80s.
Whoa.
Rain, sleet, snow, hurricane, doesn't matter. And the 21 is the 21 gun salute, of course.
Mhm.
Um, there, where the rifle is, because we said, well, the rifle seemed to always be on the shoulder outside of the monument of where the tomb was. She says, yeah, his job is to protect the fallen from
From the
any
outside.
foe. Yep.
Mm.
And then I said, but there wasn't a rank. And she goes, why do you think that is? Didn't know. She said, because they don't want to inadvertently outrank the unknown soldier. And I was like,
Wow.
wow. And when you start to think about where my head goes on all of this, was the person who designed that protocol,
Mhm.
right? Someone had to think about, someone designed this memorial, someone designed this way to remember and think about things and set us into a pattern of thinking about things. And as a designer myself, in the way I solving problems, I could just, it was just a fun layer of appreciation that was just spectacular.
Totally. What's interesting to me is the meaning behind an intentional design, and what does that mean to the designer, and what's that mean to the people who are observing that or interacting with that.
And knowing that you're building something that will last for decades, which
Exactly.
is kind of what we do as men, right? As fathers and family men, we're designing something that's going to last, kids beget kids, which beget kids, and whole generational stuff. We've talked about generational things a lot. And it got me thinking about leadership and who we listen to as leaders. And is it just happenstance that we listen to those people? Do we intentionally go? Do we seek them out? How does that whole thing work? Right. The premise of our show is, if you and I could go back in time to our 25 or 35 or 45-year-old self and have a good long talk about a decision we're about to make or how to undo something, like, would we listen to ourselves? And so today I'd like to talk about, who are we listening to?
And when you speak about that, and I'm happy to answer the same question, and I'm sort of curious about if we'll answer it similarly. What does leading mean? And how do we know who to follow and why? I know that's like a gigantic question.
Yeah,
So,
which is why we have this show, thank God. um I'll use my experience. When I'm looking, I wouldn't say I'm looking for a leader. I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for an answer. I'm in a troubled time in life, and I'm out of answers. So I'm looking, I'm searching, I'm a seeker, right? Whether I found that reading the Bible, or I found that someone suggested a book. I read TM, I'm okay, you're okay, in my
mhm.
first divorce. And it helped me, right? It helped me a lot. at least in my experience, leader implies followers, and just because someone's your boss doesn't mean they're a leader. So I think in my
Exactly.
life, leaders have been someone who's I'm not following them as much as I'm following their ideas.
So would you make a distinction between if I were to come in, for instance, and say, Mark, follow me, or if I were to say to all the men who and or women who are watching this show, follow me, I've got the right ideas, what would that be like?
It'd be like you're an Instagram troll.
Exactly. So
I think what happens is if you were to say that, you automatically are the wrong guy. For
exactly.
me, you're automatically the wrong guy. It's why someone says something. Well, here's a perfect example. You and I met almost a year ago and did not know one another. And in talking in that first hour, the things you said were attractive to me and had a gravitational pulling force that made me want to hear more of what you thought.
Right?
And consequently, we had another conversation a week later, and and I think subconsciously it's testing, was that a fluke or is there more of that there? And I
Mhm.
think I specifically said at the end of the second one, thank you, sir, may I have another? And we met the following Saturday, and I said, could I hit the record button, because this is just too good? And again, it's following the ideas, and it wasn't until 4 or 5 weeks ago that we actually met in person. So it's not about, in my case, it's about not the man but the ideas.
I agree with that. And what I would add to that is, I mean, my experience was very similar. I got off of our first couple of calls and went, oh my God, this is incredible. And it was the ideas, and it was also the energy and the openness.
Hmm.
So there's a piece in here around leadership that has, for me, has to do with how we do something versus what we do.
100%.
And um, I do want to reference a question that was in the Mighty Networks chat, which the question was, to the best of my recollection, I did not memorize it, is in your and my discussions about leaders, the question, and some of our earlier discussions, the question was, there are so many people out there that are saying that they're leaders. And one, how do I know who to follow? And how do I stay out of a cult kind of a process? And I have a lot of thoughts about that. And um, so are you good with me just jumping on that for a
Rock
minute?
on.
Part of my perspective of leadership has to do with whether or not whomever the leader is, are they willing to create an opening
Right.
for another person to step into by choice? And here's what I mean by that. If I create an opening and somebody wants to step into it, they're more than welcome to. If I create an opening and someone goes, that's not for me, they're more than welcome to have that perspective also. That there's an equal respect for someone who chooses to step in or not. The other part of that And this is what I've actually tried to do in my life. Um, Sometimes I've been successful at it, and sometimes I have not been quite so successful. And that is that I try to lead through being competent.
Mm.
And a large part of what that means is that I actually don't, for instance, we just spilled horse food all over my shirt when I was feeding. I just noticed. Um, is that I do not market. I may start marketing some things. I'm
We're
learning how
working
to
on
do
we're
that.
working
Yeah,
on that.
working on that.
But it's not about marketing. Let me just reframe the word. You don't have any kind of awareness campaign that you are around.
Yes,
Yes, that's
yes,
part of marketing, absolutely. But I think in your case, marketing has some context around it that's negative. And so if we say, well, I want to raise awareness that there's a guy named Dewey Freeman on the planet, just like there's an awareness that the Elder Council exists, that's a different thought. Just saying that.
well, exactly. And that that awareness is based. I have to do work to become competent, to be able to create an opening for somebody to step into.
Yeah.
So that's actually one part of it for me. And I really like your reframe of, okay, let's increase awareness. But even that increasing of awareness comes through sharing competency from my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other piece that I think is incredibly important, and I say this when I teach, is I do not expect anybody to agree with me. Everybody has the choice
Yeah.
to disagree, and someone can listen to me or us for an hour or a day or 3 days, and my expectation is singular in that what my expectation slash hope is that people take in what I have to say, process it through whatever filters they want to process it through, and take what fits and then drop what doesn't fit for them.
Let me react on just that last part. I've done tons of training. We've both done tons of training, been on both sides of that table, right? Trainer and
Right.
trainee. And I learned a million years ago to, if I get one thing out of the 3 days that sticks, that's a win.
Absolutely.
And that's a damn low bar when you look at all the stuff you get. So I go out of my way to like be really present and focused, and maybe I'll get 2 things, which would be great. But that's as a student, as a trainer, or and now as an elder. Oh gosh, I think it was 8 years ago. I think I was challenged with the question, what do you want to be known for? Like, what is that? And through that bit of work, I decided that I needed to be very aware to make every moment memorable. And that was
Yes.
because I would meet parents of of kids I'd had through various programs later, at the grocery store 10 years later, and I get them saying, thank you so much for the impact you had on my child. In one way or another, it changed everything for them. And I thought to myself, what the heck did you say, Sylvester? And
What I say
and
10 years ago that I don't remember.
and it was probably more to your point of how I was, what I did, how I showed up,
Absolutely.
right? But I took that as a challenge to treat every interaction with someone else as very important, and that the thing I say may be something that they remember that changes everything for them, that there is a possibility, put it this way, not that what I'm saying is
Mhm.
important, but it may be a thing that unlocks something or triggers something or gets them to think something differently. And so I I put this level of import, if you will, on interaction, knowing that something like that might happen, which is kind of cool to
That is
think,
super cool.
right? Like, wow, is this the time? So I tend to I'm very fun and funny and have fun and light in life, but I'm cognizant of that.
Absolutely. And we do not know how we will affect somebody.
Correct.
So
Ever,
ever.
ever.
So there are these two wonderful people in Santa Barbara that teach storytelling.
No, where? Oh, I got to get in touch with them.
Named Mark and Kimberly. So I'm going to tell a super quick story. I am 30-ish years old, and I went back to the grade school that uh, I went to, and that actually my mother now is teaching at. And I walked into my kindergarten room, and there sat Mrs. Sowers, who was packing up all of her stuff. And I introduced myself, and tears started coming down her face, and she jumped up and hugged me. And we began talking. And I had fortunately walked in on her very last day. She was retiring and packing her stuff up. And I told her how important her class was to me. I was a little 4.5 to 5 year old boy, and kindergarten then was a half a day. And she made a gigantic difference in my life
Hmm,
simply through her kindness.
hmm.
And we had probably half an hour, 45-minute discussion. And I left with a new perspective of how we can impact somebody and not even know it.
Right.
She literally, there's about 4 or 5 major times in my life that have contributed to who I am, and that was one of them.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's the other piece of leadership, is that we don't know how we're going to impact somebody. We don't know how we're going to affect somebody the rest of their lives. And even now, in my early 70s, I still think back to Mrs. Sowers, who I'm sure is no longer alive,
I
and
want
how
to
she
add
impacted
I want
me.
to add a tiny piece that just dawned on
Please,
me,
please do.
because I don't know how cognizant you could have been about what Mrs. Sowers was saying, but how she was showing up and what she looked like and what she did had I'm going to guess, a deeper impact on you as a 5-year old. And answering this question about who do we listen to, who do we not listen to, and it's not just what they say, it's what they do. One of the things I've noticed, you've heard that old saying, practice what you preach.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very cynical when it comes to teachers. Oh my God, it's so
Yes,
easy to blow smoke up someone's ass. It's so easy to
it is
bullshit. It's
so easy.
so easy to just, read a self-help book and then go out and purport to be that. There's, these insta heroes who are, purporting to have all the answers and all that stuff. And I look at what they do and I see, how are they in their off time? Are they kind to people? Are they, I mean, you see all this and you're like, ooh, well, that doesn't square with what they said,
Right.
right? And so I think that's another part of it. Like when we saw the Jim and Tammy, the Tammy Faye movie, right? And you look at what they talk about Christian charity and all of those kinds of things, and you looked at how they lived and how they spent their money and how they did all of that stuff. You just there's there's a ton of that. I think if you're going to go take someone and say, that's the person who's, let's say, I'm going to follow those ideas. I'm kind of doing the scientific method on that shit all the time. I'm testing that,
Mhm.
test that against, well, you and I did that in person at the event. Someone was talking and you were like, that's not right. That's that's not right. Right.
I remember saying
And
that.
and in real time, you're doing that. I think that with a cult, you're that discernment filter is depressed.
Yes. And and exactly. And going back to Mrs. Sowers, I do not remember one word she's
See,
ever said
to
to me.
my point, of
Your
course.
point exactly,
Of course.
1000%.
Yeah.
And so was she congruent with who she was and how she treated me?
There you go. That
100,
was the word, congruency. That would be my test.
yeah, 100%. And so the level of creating an opening, the level of, is there congruency? And this is gonna, I will need to be clear about this, is I care about people and I don't care if they follow me. And here's what I mean by that is it is completely okay with me if I suggest something or I teach something and someone walks away and goes, yeah, that just doesn't fit for me. And when somebody does that, I go, it's okay with me.
So let
And
me
that's what I'm,
I want to poke on that just a minute
poke
because
a little bit.
I'm a coach and I am kind of measuring the coachability index of someone I'm working with.
Mhm.
Like, are they going to take the coaching? We do this a lot. We had
Sure.
a speaker here a couple of weeks ago, have him on stage, do the video, look at the video, do this, don't do this, dot, 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 gets up, nails it the first time. He's coachable, right? You want to, as a
Absolutely.
coach, you have seen someone make the same mistake over and over. You do it with your horse riding. You've seen it over and over and over. And so you say to them, here, do this. I have no idea how to do horses. So I'm saying you pull, you do whatever, and you
Mhm.
know it's going to work. And then now if they go, now I don't believe you or I don't trust you, coach. I know a better way, or that's not going to work for me. I have a problem in that, in the sense that, look,
Mm, mm.
I told you this was going to happen. I don't want to say I told you so. I don't do that. But if you do, there's a cause and effect. I've seen this happen a billion times. And if you just do this little if you're just nicer, if you just shut up for a second and let her talk and listen, or if you just some of those kind of things, it will be better, even though that doesn't feel comfortable to you. Trust me, we
Mhm.
like to say, trust the training, right? Trust the training. Now, so park that. That's a way I think
No, no,
about
no.
stuff,
I'm hearing you.
right? However, someone says, I don't get that, or I don't agree with you, or I don't want to take that. I kind of want another bite at the apple to say, okay, what part of that didn't sit right? Because for me, that's an opportunity to train. So I create an opening to, let's have a little debate about that. Oh, huh. And I may find there was a precondition with this person and that isn't going to work for them. That would be a great thing to know for me, to be able to say, oh, huh, now I can learn.
Right. And what you're talking about, you and I are on the exact same page with that. Part of what I'm talking about when I say it's okay with me if people don't agree with me or don't want to buy in, What I'm talking about is the underlying contract before the coaching happens or before the therapy happens. So if, for instance, I mean, I came to Santa Barbara to work with you and Kimberly. The underlying, I knew enough about at least some of the foundational stuff of your approach, both of your approaches, that I could go, okay, I'm willing to make the contract to learn from you in this particular way. I also know that it would have been okay not to make that contract in the first place.
So this
So,
gets to, let's go back to awareness for a second.
yes,
You had an awareness that we existed,
yes,
which leads to something called knowledge. Oh, I want to learn more about whatever that is.
X,
So
Y, and
now
Z.
I want a little more knowledge, which leads to interest. Huh. Well, that's kind of interesting. Oh, I'd like a little more of that knowledge, please.
Right,
Which leads to liking, which is, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like this. I'd like a little more of this. And which leads to commitment, which is the contract.
right,
And so that's awareness, knowledge, interest, liking, commitment.
right.
And
And
it's through there that here's to your point of it's okay that they go away. Not everybody likes our shit. On anybody.
exactly.
And what you want to do is you want those people who aren't a fit to fail fast.
Well, the way that I would put it, I want those people who aren't a fit to go, I want to support them to go find a fit for them.
You may not even be able to do that, sir.
And that may be
you
true.
may able to give them a clean exit without them feeling weird. You know,
True.
I would have employees come into my office and they'd be sheepish, just they're like, what's up, buddy? Corbin was, I remember this one just saying, and he was struggling. What's wrong? Because I got to give you my notice. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Where are you going? He didn't expect that. He was like, right, where are you going? He was going to DreamWorks, and he ended up having a phenomenal career at DreamWorks running animation. He was exiting. It was time to exit.
Mm-hmm.
Right, time to exit. And I could have let him lead with guilt. Well, I've done all this for you, and I mean, he could easily could have done that easily. What do you mean you don't believe what I say? To your point, what do you mean you're just too stupid? You don't get whatever. Instead of God be with you.
Yeah, congratulations.
Can I make you a sandwich on the way out?
Absolutely. And so we're saying something really similarly, I think, because, and I want to circle back around to the question around cults and leaderships and those kind of things, is that when there's be weary, I think that's the right word. Wary of those quote leaders or
false prophets.
Yes, where there's no good way out. Because, and I know for a fact that if I said this X, Y, and Z isn't working for me, I need a different direction, what would you or Kimberly say?
Good luck.
Either
how
good
can we
luck
help you?
Or how can we help?
Yeah.
And that's the definition of not being a cult versus going, oh, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you able to fit in? Why, I mean, so the creation of an opening to step in, as well as the creation of an opening to step out, is incredibly important. What I know you're thinking, let me say one more thing that will make you think even more. I love you.
Oh,
With a horse, we always leave them a way out, always,
mm,
so that they're safe.
mm,
We need that same thing. We always need
mm.
a way out that can be supported.
It's funny. Scott Mann, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. Oh, he says, make sure you know where the exits are,
Exactly.
right? Have an exit strategy. The ironic, being an entrepreneur my whole life, it was ironic to learn when I started raising professional money, that the first thing they want to hear, or not the first thing, one of the things they want to hear during the first conversation with you is what's your exit strategy.
Exactly.
And I'm like, hold it, dude, I am building. Did you not listen to me? I am building this amazing thing with this great work, and it's going to do it. And how am I going to get out? They want to know, how am I getting out of this thing when I want to get out for whatever reason it is? And when you're talking to money, how am I going to get out with a big bag of gold?
Well, that's a part of it. The other part that I think about is if we don't have the choice of choosing to step out,
Mm.
that means we don't have the choice of choosing to step in.
Ooh. So how do we fine tune the radar of life? If one of my radars is, I love a radar metaphor. It's fantastic for things coming in and going out and identifying friendlies and hostiles. And we can all see that picture in our mind, right? We've seen enough movies. We know exactly what that looks like. And you can dial all the dials to get everything as fine tuned as you need so you can tell. So if we were just to say on self-help books and ideas and all the insta heroes and insta gurus and all that kind of stuff, what are there three questions for men that they, not just men, but are there three questions that we could conjure right now that might help people be more discerning?
Great question. Well, clearly one of them, since we're talking about this, is there an exit strategy? Can I leave intact? And that is a really important piece to me. Can I leave intact?
I think one for me, we all have a spidey sense. We all have a somatic reaction to things, right? And it just doesn't, when we say it, it doesn't feel right.
Right.
I would in the first interaction with a new idea kind of test how my body feels to that thing.
So listen to your gut.
Listen to your gut. Yep.
And by the way, there's a great book out there called The Gift of Fear that speaks about that a lot. And it's not just about fear. And on a little bit more scientific level, that listening to our gut, that's called our neuroceptive system.
Yep.
So becoming very aware of that.
And is it fair to say that if I really want to believe, I'm going to rationalize against my gut?
Exactly. I will override my neuroceptive system.
Like that girl, I like that girl, but danger, flashing.
Danger.
But I'm not going to listen.
And she's sexy as hell, so I'm going to go for it. And the other piece that I really look at is wherever I'm stepping into, is there an invitation and conversation, or is there a sales? meaning I'm inviting you in. I'm happy to talk about anything, or if you don't do this, your life's going to be ruined, which I don't know if sales is the right word on that other end, but
That
the
so is it the motivation of the person? Are they there to help me genuinely? Do I feel they're genuinely, whatever this is, they genuinely care about me and want to help, or do they want to help themselves?
exactly what
How would we say that?
very well put. Um, well, who is
Who do they want to help, me or them?
yeah, who are they? Who are they serving? Are they serving themselves, or are they serving you?
So about 40 minutes ago, you said, it's right here. I got to get it out. Do we get it out?
I think so. It's like who, when I'm leading for instance, a therapy session, my job is to serve the people that are there. That's what I do.
We ask
When
the
we,
question before every encounter, what do they need? What do they
what do
need
they need?
today? What do they need today?
Exactly.
Even though we have an idea of what we want to teach, or we were all prepared to do this, or this is the next thing in their path, or whatever that is, we're checking in constantly. What do they need today?
Exactly.
My friend, Mr. Freeman, Mr. Dewey Freeman, we've come to the end of our time, but it's not the end of our talks. So I can't wait to talk to you again, my friend.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Thank you